Quinn Vance didn't mean to burn the sauce, he just didn't know what the hell béarnaise was supposed to taste like. "Dad, that smells weird," his 6-year-old daughter, Veta, whispered beside him, tugging on the hem of his borrowed chef's coat. She was perched on a stool behind the prep station, coloring in a princess-themed activity book with a purple crayon. Quinn yanked the pan off the burner and winced. "Yeah. I think I just ruined a French classic." Chef David, the actual head chef of the upscale New York restaurant, had called him this morning, voice hoarse and panicked. "I can't breathe through my nose, I'm sweating through my socks, and the governor's table is booked for tonight. I need your help, man. Just prep a few things, toss some greens, stay out of the way." Quinn wasn't a real chef, he was a line cook at a small diner in Queens, but David had taught him enough over the years to fake it for a night. It was supposed to be a quiet shift, just prep and plating under the radar, then the governor canceled and a VIP reservation showed up instead. Solo guest. Private table. No name, just a note. Allergic to shellfish, prefers red wine. Seated by the window. Now, Quinn was sweating bullets while trying to whip up a last-minute entree that didn't look like it had come from a microwave meal box. He took a shaky breath and started over. At the front of the restaurant, seated at the corner table with the view of the city skyline, Marceline Grant stirred her wine glass slowly, eyes scanning the room. She hadn't planned on coming here tonight, but after a long board meeting at the Grant Corporation, she needed silence, red wine, and a meal that didn't come from a catered tray. No one knew she was the CEO here. She'd made the reservation under a different name just to disappear for a while. She didn't want another person asking for a partnership, a donation, or a favor. She wanted to be invisible. But the second her plate arrived a perfectly pan-seared steak with a side of roasted potatoes and grilled asparagus, she noticed something strange. It wasn't pretentious. It was warm. Real. Seasoned just right. Balanced with care, not ego, she took another bite, tilted her head, and glanced toward the open kitchen. That's when she saw him. He didn't move like the others. He wasn't stiff or overly polished. He had tattoos peeking out from under the cuff of his coat, his sleeves rolled up, his dark hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it all night. And near his station sat a little girl, swinging her legs under the counter as she giggled at something he said. Marceline blinked. That wasn't a chef, that was a dad. Intrigued, she motioned for the server. "Who's cooking tonight?" she asked casually. The server looked nervous. Chef David called in sick. "That's Quinn, he's just helping out." "Quinn," she repeated, her lips curving slightly. "And the girl," his daughter, Veta, "she's quiet, promise." Marceline smiled. "She can stay." When the server left, she took another bite and leaned back, watching him. There was something in the way he focused, the way he whispered to his daughter like she was his whole world. He wasn't trying to perform. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. And that's exactly why he did, in the kitchen. Quinn was scraping together dessert, some kind of chocolate mousse with berries, when the manager slipped beside him. "The woman at table 8 wants to speak to the chef." Quinn's stomach dropped. She hated it. No, she wants to meet the chef. He looked at Veta, who grinned and gave him a thumbs up. "Go, Dad, you can do it." He wiped his hands, took a shaky breath, and stepped out into the dining room. And then he saw her. She was stunning. Long dark hair pulled into a sleek twist, sharp cheekbones, a tailored navy blazer over a silk blouse, and eyes that looked like they could read through walls. She stood as he approached, her expression unreadable. "You're the one who made this?" she asked. Quinn nodded. "Yeah, sorry if it wasn't what you expected. I'm not the real chef, I'm just helping out tonight." She tilted her head. "And the little girl, my daughter, her babysitter canceled last minute. I didn't have a choice." Marceline smiled. "She's adorable. Thanks." "She thinks she's my boss." That made her laugh, warm and low. "Well, she might be onto something." He raised an eyebrow. "Did I mess something up?" "I can comp the meal, I'm not complaining," she said quickly. "It was the best thing I've eaten in weeks." "Oh," he blinked. "Thank you." She studied him for a moment, then held out her hand. "Marcy." He hesitated, then shook it. "Quinn, they didn't let go right away." "Nice to meet you, Quinn," she said softly. "You have a good heart." He laughed under his breath. "You got all that from a steak." "I got that from the way you cook for your daughter," she replied, her voice calm but sure. "And from the way you're not pretending to be someone you're not." He didn't know what to say to that, so she added, "You free tomorrow night?" He blinked. "To cook? No," she said, her lips curling again. "To have dinner with me." Quinn looked back at the kitchen, then at her. "You know I'm not some fancy chef with a food truck empire, right? I live in a walk-up in Queens. My car doesn't even have heat." Marceline's eyes sparkled. "Good. Because I'm tired of fake people." He smiled slowly, heart pounding. "All right," he said. "Tomorrow night." She leaned in just slightly. "Pick me up at 7. As she walked away, heels clicking confidently, Quinn stood frozen in place. Veta tugged on his sleeve. "Dad. Was that your date?" He looked down at her, dazed. "I think it was." Veta giggled. "She looks like a queen." He smiled. "She kinda does," and neither of them knew just how close to a queen she really was. Quinn stood outside the brownstone with a bouquet of wildflowers gripped in his hand like a lifeline. He'd spent half the morning Googling whether wildflowers were too informal for a first date. He eventually decided they were honest like him, and he didn't have time to pretend to be someone else. Veta was already tucked into bed at his neighbor Maria's upstairs apartment. Maria was a retired teacher with a soft spot for Veta and a fierce sense of duty. She'd watched her on short notice before, and had even promised to help with her homework if Quinn ran late. He checked his watch. 6:58. The door opened before he could knock. Marceline stood in the doorway, her coat already on, a small clutch in her hand. Her hair was loose tonight, falling over one shoulder, and she was wearing a simple black dress with a neckline that didn't scream for attention yet made Quinn forget how to form words. "You're early," she said, a trace of challenge in her tone. "I was afraid of being late," he replied, holding the flowers out. "These are for you." She took them, brushing her fingers over the petals. "You strike me as the kind of man who picks these himself." "I did. There's a little shop run by a woman named Yuki a few blocks from my place. She grows them on her rooftop." Marceline tilted her head, surprised. "That's rare." "So is a woman like you asking a man like me to dinner," he said. She didn't deflect. "I have a feeling labels mean less to you than substance." He opened the car door for her, the passenger door of his beat-up sedan that rattled when it hit second gear. She didn't flinch when she climbed in. "So where are we going?" she asked. "I figured if I took you somewhere fancy, it'd feel like I was trying too hard. So I'm hoping you trust me." "I wouldn't be in this car if I didn't." He drove them to a small restaurant tucked into a quiet corner of Brooklyn Heights. The place didn't have a sign, just a flickering lantern over the door and windows lined with fogged glass. Inside, it smelled like cinnamon and roasted lamb, and the hostess greeted him by name. Marceline looked around as they were seated at a corner table. "This place is beautiful," she said. "Owner's a friend. He lets me come in after hours sometimes to test recipes. I helped him fix his walk-in freezer last winter." A waitress brought them warm bread wrapped in linen and glasses of water. Marceline leaned forward. "Tell me about Veta." He blinked. "Most people start with something light." "I'm not most people," she said, tearing a piece of bread. He laughed under his breath. "Fair enough." He told her how Veta had been born 2 months early, how her mother had left when she was just a baby, and how he'd worked nights at a convenience store while taking online culinary classes during the day, sleeping in 4-hour shifts so he could keep up with daycare drop-offs and part-time restaurant jobs. "Sounds like you've lived 3 lives," she said. "Feels like it." "Do you ever get time for yourself?" He shrugged. "Not really, but when I'm cooking, it's like the world quiets down. It's the one thing I'm sure I'm good at." She studied him. "You're better than good." He looked away for a moment, unsure how to respond. Compliments from strangers were one thing, from her, they landed heavier. "What about you?" he asked. "What made you come into the restaurant alone that night?" There was a pause. "I needed to remember what it felt like to choose something for myself," she said. "I've spent the last 10 years making decisions that affect hundreds of people. I forgot what it's like to eat a meal without discussing quarterly projections." He nodded slowly. "So you go out alone to breathe?" "Exactly." He hesitated before asking, "What do you actually do?" She raised an eyebrow. "You didn't Google me," he coughed. "I figured that might ruin the mystery." "You might regret that," she said. "Try me." She took a sip of her water, then set it down. "I run Grant Corporation. My father started it. Real estate, tech ventures, sustainable development. I'm CEO. Quinn didn't move for a beat, then let out a breath. Well, that explains the driver who dropped you off at the restaurant. Not used to people like me, she asked carefully. I'm not used to people like you noticing people like me. I notice what most overlook, she said. It's how I survived in boardrooms full of men twice my age. He leaned back in his chair. So you're a fighter. I had to be. My father believed women should be seen, not heard. When he got sick, he handed everything to one of his attorneys. I fought to get it back, and I won. He let out a low whistle. Remind me never to get on your bad side. She smiled, but this time it didn't feel like performance. You're not exactly what I expected either. How so? You listen more than you talk. You don't try to prove anything. And you didn't blink when I said I ran a billion-dollar company. I've faced worse, he said, then added, like parent-teacher conferences. That made her laugh, loud and unguarded. They lingered over dessert apple tart with caramel drizzle, and when the check came, Marceline reached for it. Quinn caught her hand gently. Let me. You sure? I've got it covered. I helped fix the oven last week. They owe me. She let him, but her eyes stayed on his hand a moment longer than necessary. When they stepped outside, the air had turned colder. He handed her his jacket without a word. Thank you, she said quietly. They stood beside his car, neither wanting to break the moment. I want to see you again, she said. You're sure? After the world's least fancy dinner date, she stepped closer. There's nothing small about honesty. He hesitated, then reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I should tell you, he said, I don't have a lot to offer, no savings, no connections, just me. Good, she said, because I didn't come looking for things. I came looking for something real. He kissed her then, slow and steady, like he wasn't in a rush to get to anything else. And for the first time in years, the noise in both their lives went quiet. Quinn adjusted the collar of his button-down shirt, still damp from the rain that had started halfway through his walk to the subway. He didn't own a car that could be trusted across the bridge more than once a week, and tonight, the train was faster anyway. He was early again, which meant he had time to pace outside the glass facade of the Midtown building, trying not to look out of place among the tailored suits and polished shoes sweeping past him. Inside, a private event buzzed with muted jazz and clinking glasses. The Grant Corporation's quarterly gala wasn't just a business gathering, it was a glittering showcase of influence, power, and reputation. Marceline had invited Quinn 2 days ago, her voice calm but unreadable when she'd said, "You should see the world I live in." He hadn't expected her to mean this literally. A valet approached him with a nod, glancing down at the envelope Quinn carried. Inside was the formal invitation she'd sent, hand-addressed. The man waved him through and Quinn stepped into the building, the warmth and light swallowing him whole. It was like stepping into another universe. The room was a cathedral of glass and gold. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. The guests were dressed in tailored tuxedos and shimmering gowns, their laughter soft and practiced. Waiters moved like shadows, offering delicate hors d'oeuvres and flutes of chilled champagne. Every detail whispered money. He didn't belong here. But then he saw her. Marceline stood near the center of the room, speaking with a silver-haired man in a deep navy suit. Her gown was midnight blue, sleek and understated. The neckline curved just enough to draw attention, though the power was in how confidently she stood. She noticed Quinn the second he entered, but didn't rush to him. Instead, she finished her sentence, nodded once, and excused herself like someone used to leading entire rooms. He met her halfway. "You're early," she said, her tone low. "I figured I'd need time to get through security," he said. "Or my nerves. I'm glad you came," he nodded at the room. "This is something else." She followed his gaze. "It's not as untouchable as it looks." "I doubt anyone's ever spilled applesauce on that carpet," he said. She smiled, but her eyes stayed on him. "You're the only person here who didn't spend the week rehearsing what to say. I didn't even know what to wear." "You look fine," she said, then added, "better than fine." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. She opened it, brows lifting. "You drew this. It's Veda's interpretation of you. She says you have boss eyes." Marceline laughed, turning the paper to admire the crayon masterpiece of a woman with enormous eyelashes and a crown made of what looked like bacon. She's not wrong. Quinn watched her tuck it carefully into her clutch. You really keep all your promises, don't you? I try not to make any I can't keep. He didn't ask what that meant. A man approached them then, tall and lean, with a rehearsed smile and a glass of whiskey in hand. Marcy. I see you've brought a guest. Quinn extended a hand. Quinn Vance. The man shook it barely. Julian Wexler, we used to work together. Marceline's voice cooled just slightly. Julian was CFO before I took over. Julian's smile tightened, and now she's got the whole empire. Impressive considering the board expected someone a little more seasoned. I think I've proven myself, she said. No doubt, Julian said, eyes flicking to Quinn. And who's he? Your new investment. Quinn stepped back, ready to walk away, but Marceline's voice cut through the air before he could. He's the man who taught my daughter how to make pancakes shaped like hearts. Julian blinked. You have a daughter? No, she said calmly. His daughter. But she's taken a liking to me. Julian hesitated. Right, well, good luck with that. Marceline didn't reply. She waited until Julian was gone before turning to Quinn. I'm sorry, he's a relic. Quinn shook his head. You don't need to explain. People like him don't bother me. They bother me, she said, because they think men like you are disposable. He didn't say anything because he wasn't sure if he was supposed to feel honored or exposed. She took his hand. Come with me. They slipped out of the ballroom through a side hallway and up a narrow staircase he hadn't noticed earlier. At the top was a rooftop garden, strung with golden lights and overlooking the skyline. It was quiet, private. This is where I come when I need to remember what matters, she said. He looked out over the city. It's beautiful. So are you, she said. He turned, startled. You mean that? I don't say things I don't mean. He took a breath. This whatever this is, it's not going to be easy. I don't need easy, she said. I need real. He stepped closer. You sure you're ready for a man with a 6-year-old who thinks glitter is a breakfast food? I'm sure. The air between them shifted, electric and quiet, and then she kissed him. Not like the first time, this kiss was deeper. Certain, it told him she wasn't experimenting or passing time. She was choosing him. When she pulled back, her voice was quiet. I want you in my life, Quinn Vance. He didn't answer right away. He just held her, arms wrapped around her waist, forehead resting against hers. Then he whispered, You're already in mine. The scent of cinnamon rolls drifted from the oven, warm and heady, mixing with the faint hum of a cartoon in the next room. Veda sat cross-legged on the floor, her tiny fingers working through a jigsaw puzzle while Quinn carefully spooned icing into a bowl. A knock echoed from the door just as the timer beeped. Can you get it, Bug? He called, wiping his hands on a towel. Veda sprinted to the door, flinging it open without hesitation. Marceline crouched down, grinning as Veda launched into her arms. You remembered it's Saturday. I saved the corner piece for you, Veda said, tugging her inside. Quinn leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching them. Marceline's coat was still damp from the drizzle outside, but her eyes were bright. She'd never come empty-handed this time. It was a tote bag with art supplies and a tiny plant in a teacup. Ferns are low maintenance, she said as Quinn raised an eyebrow. Thought it might survive in your kitchen. Is that a challenge? He asked, stepping forward to take her coat. No, she said, glancing around, it's a bet. If it dies within a month, I'll cook dinner. He laughed, low and surprised. You cook? I follow instructions well enough. Besides, I thought it was time I tried something outside my element. Veda tugged on Marceline's sleeve. Can you help with the puzzle first? Marceline smiled. Lead the way. Quinn watched them settle on the floor, Veda explaining her no-peeking rule for corner pieces. He turned back to the kitchen, plating the cinnamon rolls with practiced ease. The rain tapped against the windows, steady and soft. By the time they sat down to eat, the puzzle was finished and Veda had convinced Marceline to braid her hair into a crown. Marceline didn't mention the way her fingers fumbled slightly. It didn't matter. Veda beamed like she was royalty. Over breakfast, Marceline glanced at Quinn across the table. I need your opinion on something. He set down his fork. All right. I've been offered a seat on a global advisory board. It would mean quarterly trips to Geneva, some restructuring at Grant Corp, and a very loud spotlight. You want it? I used to think I did. She paused. But lately, I've been thinking about how much I've built by myself, and how little I've built with anyone. Quinn didn't speak. He waited. Marceline continued. I've spent years proving I didn't need anyone, but now I'm wondering what it would mean to choose someone. Not because I have to, but because I want to. He met her gaze. Are you saying you're thinking about staying? I'm saying I'm thinking about us. Veda spoke through a mouthful of roll. Are you going to marry my dad? Quinn choked slightly, coughing into his napkin. Marceline didn't flinch. I don't know, she said calmly. Would that be okay with you? Veda nodded. Only if you let me be the flower girl. Marceline extended her pinky across the table. Deal. After breakfast, Veda curled up on the couch with a book while Quinn and Marceline stepped onto the fire escape. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp. Marceline leaned against the railing. You've changed things, she said, watching the skyline. I didn't mean to. I know. That's what makes it real. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, thumbing the lid open. Inside sat a simple silver ring, no diamonds, no flourishes. You probably get proposals with yachts and violins, he said. She looked at him. I've had offers. Not one of them was a proposal. He held the ring out. I can't give you a private island, but I can make you pancakes every Sunday. I can make Veda's lunch in the shape of dinosaurs. I can fix the leaky faucet without calling anyone. I can love you without asking you to change a single thing. Marceline didn't hesitate. She took the box and pressed it closed, then cupped his face in her hands. I don't want yachts, she whispered. I want this. I want you. He kissed her before the words could catch in his throat. Later that week, they stood under a canopy of lights at the same Brooklyn restaurant where they'd had their first date. This time, the tables were gone, replaced with rows of chairs and a small arch made of wildflowers. Marceline wore a cream suit, tailored and sharp. Veda wore a crown of daisies and carried a basket of petals, which she scattered with dramatic flair down the aisle. Quinn stood at the front, his hands steady, his eyes fixed only on Marceline. She took his hand when she reached him, her expression soft but certain. The ceremony was short, the vows were not. They didn't speak about soulmates or fate. They spoke about choice. About building something with their hands. About the beauty of quiet mornings and shared pancakes. About messy puzzles and late-night rooftop talks. About choosing each other every day, no matter the noise. When they kissed, the guests erupted in applause. Veda cheered the loudest. That night, Marceline took Quinn's hand as they stepped into a waiting car, not a limo, just a sleek black sedan. She glanced at him, eyes dancing. You didn't ask where we're going. I figure if I'm with you, it doesn't matter. She leaned closer. We're flying out tonight. Veda's already with Maria. I booked us a cottage in the Catskills. No service, no suits. He blinked. You're serious? Completely. You've spent years giving. Time to let someone take care of you. He exhaled a quiet laugh. You always plan 10 steps ahead, don't you? She kissed his cheek. Only when it comes to the things that matter. The car pulled away from the curb, the city lights fading behind them, and for once, Quinn didn't feel like a man who didn't belong. He felt like a man who had everything he needed, a daughter who believed in magic. A woman who saw him before the world ever did. A life he never planned but would never trade. They didn't need fancy vows or big headlines, they had each other. And that was more than enough. Marceline set down her phone on the kitchen counter. Eyes narrowed as if the device itself had offended her. Quinn glanced up from the stovetop, where he was flipping grilled cheese sandwiches with the kind of focus one might reserve for a soufflé. Veda was in the hallway, trying to teach her stuffed rabbit how to jump rope using a shoelace. Bad news, he asked, not looking away from the pan. An email from the board, she said, pulling a stool out from the island. They're asking if I'm still planning to attend the Zurich summit next month. I thought you turned that down. I did, but they keep circling back. Like they can't believe I'd actually walk away from that kind of spotlight. He plated the sandwiches and brought them over, along with a bowl of tomato soup. You could remind them you're not the type to change your mind. I already did, she said, taking a bite. Twice. Then maybe they'll need a third reminder. She smiled faintly but didn't respond. Instead, she glanced around the kitchen, her eyes softening as they landed on the messy pile of crayons on the dining table, the lopsided paper crown on the counter, and the open window letting in the distant sound of a neighbor's saxophone. I never thought I'd feel at home in a place with mismatched chairs, she said. You're saying you finally embraced the charm of crooked furniture. I'm saying I never realized how sterile my life had become until I saw what it could look like with color and noise and burnt toast on Sunday. He reached across the table, brushing a crumb from her lip. You're not tempted at all to go back, she shook her head. That life was built around what I thought I had to prove. This one is built around what I actually want. Before she could say more, Veda appeared in the doorway holding the rabbit upside down. He thinks he can fly, but he's terrible at math. Can I give him an extra sandwich? Quinn grinned. He can have half. He didn't finish his spelling homework. Marceline raised an eyebrow. You make your daughter's stuffed animals do homework, she insists. Consequences are important. Veda nodded solemnly and disappeared into her room again. Marceline leaned forward, her voice low. Have you thought more about the offer from David? He hesitated. Yeah, I have. And he wants to partner on a new restaurant, full creative control. My name on the door, investors lined up and everything. That's incredible. It is, but it's a big step. I'd be working late nights again, less time at home. She reached for his hand. You've made enough sacrifices for stability. If this is what you want, we'll make it work. You'd be okay with that. I didn't fall in love with you because you played it safe. I fell in love with the way you light up talking about food. You belong in a kitchen that reflects who you are, not just who you've had to be. He studied her for a long moment. You always say exactly what I need to hear. She squeezed his fingers. That's because I listen. They made the decision that night. The restaurant opened 6 months later. Vance & Co., small, intimate, with warm lighting and no dress code. The menu changed weekly, driven by whatever Quinn felt like experimenting with. Marceline helped with the branding, keeping her fingerprints light but intentional. Veda had her own seat at the bar, complete with a gold nameplate that read Head of Quality Control. The grand opening wasn't a red carpet affair. It was soft jazz, handwritten menus, and regulars from the neighborhood coming in with wine bottles tucked under their arms. Marceline wore a navy sundress and poured water for the first hour before slipping into the kitchen to steal a bite of the mushroom risotto. Quinn caught her with a spoon in her mouth and a grin on her face. You're not subtle, he said. I'm a shareholder, she replied. Perks. After the last table cleared and the closed sign went up, Quinn pulled her into the kitchen, the smell of rosemary and butter still clinging to the air. You know, I never imagined this, he said. What, owning a restaurant? No. This, he said, gesturing to the quiet room, the dimmed lights, the laughter that still lingered in the corners. You, her, us, she stepped closer. You're not dreaming if that's what you're asking, I know. It just still feels like I stole something too good to be mine. She slid her arms around his waist. You didn't steal it, you built it. They kissed then, slow and unhurried, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything but gave everything. The weeks turned into seasons. Winter came and Veda lost her first tooth. Quinn made a batch of soft caramel apples to celebrate. Marceline taught Veda how to ice skate in Central Park, even though she fell twice and pretended she didn't bruise. Spring arrived, and with it, a weekend trip to a farmhouse upstate. Marceline surprised Quinn with a ring, not a replacement, but a second one. He wore it on a chain next to his first. They didn't need a ceremony. They already had a life. Summer brought long evenings on the rooftop, Veda chasing fireflies while Marceline read aloud from a dog-eared mystery novel. The air smelled like grilled peaches and sun-warmed pavement, and by autumn, the first reviews of Vance & Co. were in. They were glowing. But Quinn only saved one, a handwritten note tucked under the front door one morning, signed anonymously. Thank you for the kind of meal that makes you remember who you love. He framed it above the hostess stand. One evening, as the leaves began to turn and the city sighed into October, Marceline sat on the back steps of the restaurant, a blanket around her shoulders and a cup of tea in her hands. Quinn joined her, a little flower still dusting his shirt. She leaned her head against his shoulder. When Veda's older, she's going to ask us how we met. He kissed her temple. We'll tell her the truth. That I fell for a man who burned béarnaise sauce. That you saw me when no one else did. And that I didn't need a billionaire or a miracle, just a man who made the world quieter. He pulled her closer. And I'll tell her I didn't need a perfect plan. Just one night, one chance, and the woman who said yes. They sat there until the lights in the kitchen dimmed and the sky turned from lavender to charcoal. They didn't need anything more, they had enough, they had everything.